What's up, everybody? I'm just here hosting office hours. If you have any questions, anything gambling related, pop them in the chat. Just say what's up. I'll be here for an hour answering anything. It's a great way to start it off. Stay frosty. What does stay frosty mean? You tell me what stay frosty means, because I ain't hip to that term. Any questions? Football, gambling, the way I word things in the WHOP, strategy questions. I used to go to my own teacher's office hours in school and just hang out there and listen to other students come in and ask questions too. So I always used to take advantage of these office hours. So I hope you guys can do the same. Definitely bring questions, but I would assume if you have no questions, coming to these things would be helpful to just listen in and see what other people are doing and asking and getting reminders about. If you do that in a school setting, you often learn what's going to be on the test. Are the Cowboys for real this year? Tired of my heart getting stomped on, Blake. The most appropriate answer for that in office hours is I don't bother with those things. I hope so for you, but we'll see how the lines shake out each week. I like this Dallas team. I was surprised to see so much steam for the Eagles in the preseason market. I was happy to have a plus 105 division ticket on the Eagles when that closed at like minus 145. I thought that was crazy. But like Parsons is the best defensive player in the league. Dak is top 5 quarterback on any given week. You have one of the best weapons in CD. And listen, if the run game holds up, what the Cowboys did this year was they said, we're going to throw away all of the invaluable positions. Like every team prioritizes quarterback, defensive ends, and wide receivers, and they don't pay running backs and linebackers. So you look at the Cowboys roster, and that's a lot of what that is. But I hope so for you, Blake. I'll be rooting for your Cowboys. Hope the teaser leg lands tonight. Jason, JB, the real Jason Bourne is here. We don't even know if that's his real identity. I do too. I'm miffed to have a +8 when you could have had plus 8.5 by waiting. Here's a trick that I'll give you for teasers, and we're going to get into this in a week or two as I keep doing that newsletter series talking about these NFL strategies. But here's why I moved on that teaser when I did, and here's a strategy for teasers that brings in this thought and why I moved on it. DraftKings was laying the +2 at minus 112. when every book had moved this back to -1.5 for the fins, like now we're at a universal 2.5. We'll get to that. But it went from 1.5 to 2. Every book had a 2. Then they all started going back to 1.5, and DraftKings was the only one up with a 2 there. And it was juiced to -112. So here's the trick for teasers. It doesn't matter what the vig associated with the teaser is. If you're playing it into a teaser bet, you will be given teaser odds. So for if the standard line is +2.5 -120, or if the standard line is +2.5 -105, regardless of putting that into a teaser, you're going to get -120 on it. So knowing that I was moving on a -112 and still getting the -120 overall in a teaser bet, it's a little trick to be able to use juice legs in a teaser to like kind of reduce the vig you're paying for that line. And it was all at 1.5. Now the line is universally at 2.5, and now you could tease it to 8.5. So yeah, it sucks to be on the wrong side of that hook, and 8 versus 8.5 football semi-important. But that's why I moved on it when I did. And that's a little trick for teasers, is that like people say never tease a total, and you should never tease a total if it's at -110. But there's random scenarios. Maybe it's a weather game, right? And like the totals drop and it's plummeted, and the book has just such liability in one direction that they'll make us one total, -125 as the standard, and the other total even money. In that scenario, there are certain situations where you'd almost want to tease a total, because by playing a -125, you're paying such less vig when you put it in a 2-team teaser that gives you the same odds as playing a -110. Hope that works. How do you set an appropriate unit size dollars wise? Is that a more personal question? No, it's not a more personal question. Let's talk about bankroll management, and let's talk about, I'm not going to tell you what my dollar size is, but we can talk about it for you. A unit for me is 1.2% of my entire bankroll. So if you have 5 sportsbooks accounts, you have DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, Caesars, and Bet365, and you have $200 in each of them, so you have a cumulative bankroll of $1,000. So your unit size becomes 1.2% of that, which for me would be $12, or the math of that would be $12. And so you would be betting, what is it, like 13 something to win 12 as your standard unit, because you're using 1.2%. Some people, the standard range is between 1 and 2% of a total bankroll is 1 unit. So know what your total bankroll is and get to 1 or 2%. I'm a higher volume, lower risk type of bettor, so I use 1.2%. And the trick here, and the way that we start to bankroll manage and win money and scale up, is that every time you gain 5 units, every time you're net profitable, not like I won 5 units but I lost 4, you're net unit 1 profitable. Every time you're net positive 5 units, you've gained 6% in your overall bankroll. So now because 5 units times 1.2% is equal to 6%. So if you think about it like that, every time you reach a new 6% higher in your bankroll, recalculate what a new 1.2% is and scale your bet size up. Because if you're using a 1.2% bankroll, you can lose 83 units before you go broke, or you just have to win 5 units before you level up and scale up your bet. So people say, I recalculate at the end of the month. I recalculate at the end of the week. It doesn't matter if I'm winning or losing. I'll recalculate at every 2 weeks for my new unit size. That's, for me, like stupid, because like why should 2 weeks matter? What if I absolutely dominate 2 days when we get into NBA stuff and we have volume of units moving around. And what if we get 8 units in one day and 6 units the next? Why wouldn't I scale up? Why am I waiting 12 days? If what you're doing is plus EV and you're generating closing line value, then like let's get it churning. So that's how you scale. I never scale down my bankroll because if I'm playing the game of saying, will I win 5 before I lose 83? I've never lost that battle. You know, there's times where you're down 10 units in your thing. So now you're like, I have to be up 15 before I go down 73. And that scale is sliding. But I've never lost that battle. So my appropriate unit size is 1.2% of your bankroll, recalculating every 5 units you've won in net profit to scale up. Last caveat to that, and we'll move on, is you have to kind of know, and this is why it's important to track your bets, what amount of your tickets are dead weight. So last February, let's use a random example, the worst bet I've ever made was Franz Wagner to win most improved player last year, because while at the time I thought it was a decent bet, he probably got worse last year and he was nowhere close to being the most improved player. So I joke that that's the worst bet I ever made. By January, I knew Franz wasn't winning most improved, but in my pending wagers and in my account balance, it was still there. So like, that's why you need to have a tracker. Mark that as a loss when you know it's a loss. Don't mark things as a win before they're wins. You wait. Mark things as a loss when you know it's a loss, and that will save you from being overexposed in situations. If you see a future you like, bet it, and it goes the opposite direction, would you put more on it? Atkinson is plus 3,000 on FanDuel right now, and I love that bet. So I'm going to assume that's Kenny Atkinson, Coach of the Year in the NBA for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm going to assume it was, 25-1 when it opened. If you see, sometimes sometimes, yes, I did for the Russell Wilson situation, 750 and again at 425, but that's because he got slightly injured and it was relisted and whatever. I don't personally love Kenny Atkinson to win Coach of the Year. I love Kenny Atkinson because I used to work for the Nets when Kenny was the coach. So I joke that I know Kenny Atkinson. He just no way remembers me because I was just on like the game ops staff. But I'm a big fan of his. I would love to see him win the award. What would it take for the Cleveland Cavaliers to win this award? 50 plus wins. Really bringing together kind of a misfit of basketball fits in Garland and Mitchell and Mobley and Allen. Is it doable? Yeah, he's innovative. He connects with his players. He's coming from spending a lot of time in Golden State. He turned down a head coaching opportunity in Charlotte and waited for the right one and was waiting for the iron to strike. This guy knows he was going to get another stab at it. So sure, those are the pro Kenny things. There's in the principle of that, no, but there's rare exceptions to yes. I don't like when lines move against me at all. Stay frosty is a military slang phrase that means to be alert and ready for action. Oh, might as well frost my tips then. Yeah, I'm always frosty. How do you like Jameis Winston at 100-1 for comeback player of the year, or the Browns just going to eat it if they can't put Watson on the commission list with the latest lawsuit? I think Goodell said he's not putting Watson on the commissioner exempt list. By the way, can you guys comment? Do me a quick favor. Do you want me to plug in the microphone so I sound a little cleaner, or is the audio okay? Let me know if that's, because I can do that. Back to Jameis. I think Deshaun's going to play the full year. I don't even know if he qualifies for comeback player of the year too, because they changed that award this year. Like, they literally sent out new criteria to the 100 voters for NFL awards this year. And that specific one was changed. So it is a return from like literally being off the field to a high level of performance on the field. Those were the caveats, because last year it was just about the comeback itself. It wasn't about the comeback and the subsequent impact on the field, which is why everyone thought Damar Hamlin should have won the award, because his comeback was the best comeback. But he wasn't player of the year because he didn't play that much. Flacco didn't play that much either, but you could say his impact was there. But yeah, what like, is Jameis coming back from an injury? I don't think so. And there's Rodgers, there's Burrow, there's Cousins. I wouldn't freak out about either of those three teams yet. I understand, Jason, the urge to look in that direction for that award, given Burrow just got smoked by the Patriots, Jets didn't look good, and Cousins couldn't plant his back foot. That was bad. Should we pull up that market and look at some odds? We could do that. Jordy Fernandez, coach of the year. Absolutely not. Please donate that money instead. I'm going to pull up the awards at FanDuel. Those bets didn't mean anything. It doesn't matter. I sometimes click random lines to watch them later. What are we going for? Coach of the year, comeback player of the year. So Rodgers, based on week 1, took the most action, or I mean, gained the most steam. Here, I'll zoom in on that screen. Because this was plus 200 and this was plus 220. Rodgers was plus 200. Kirk Cousins was plus 220. And Burrow was, I think, also in the plus 220 range. And then Richardson is a name that comes out of nowhere. Deshaun Watson must have gone hard the other direction. I knew there was some people had interest in Watson that I spoke to before the season. You couldn't have started off worse. Like, that's a perfect example where if you bet Watson's comeback player of the year, you might as well go mark that ticket dead in your tracker and reduce that from your bankroll, even though it'll technically be there for another 20 weeks. Can you talk about your process in selecting bets? Do you dig into player data, AI? What do you study? Yeah, it's such a good question. It's like, where do I even start? My process in selecting bets. 1, I want to know the parameters of what's going on. For example, like, the reason why I bet NFL, NBA, and WNBA is because I know what's going on. I could watch the market for MLB. And if one of you had a question about MLB, we could dig into that stuff. But I don't know who's who. Like, I know who Aaron Judge is. I did work for the Yankees too. I know who Juan Soto is, but I don't really know. I couldn't tell you the current shortstop for the Yankees. It was Didi Gregorius when I worked there. And there's a video on the Yankees website that's Didi meets the Yankees staff, and you see him walking around, and your boy gaps up Didi. 2-second clip. So one, I want to know what's going on. So many people want to bet the Masters because it's this week, or college football because it's on. I don't stay fixated on what's coming next. I stay fixated on what is my markets. Now let's talk about markets. You've probably heard DraftKings is instituting this like tax on winning, or then they took it off because they got so much hate for their winner tax, and they started putting it in lines and making the lines juiced. That was the best thing ever for me, because the markets that I play into are game spreads, totals, and occasionally props, and occasionally futures. But I don't really bother studying obscure markets. I study the markets where the most information is available. And the beauty of that DraftKings thing, is they put those things on anytime touchdown props and long shot things and crazy things. They didn't change their -110s on game spreads and totals, because if they put that at -112s and just baked in the tax, everyone would start shopping elsewhere. So for me as a bettor, I'm still betting with DraftKings the same and paying no fucking tax, because it's not in the lines and in the markets that I do. So market and market hold would be another thing. If you're playing -110s, right, then you take the implied probability of every available line in that market. For a game spread, it's 2 different -110s. And you say, okay, if they're each 52.38, then the combined theoretical hold of that market is 104.76. And then the difference, 4.76 from the 100%, is what the sports book takes home. That's their break rate. You go look into prop markets, it's often 15%. You go look in season leaders, it's 12-15%. Like prop markets like 6 to 8%. Season leaders are things like 10 to 12 to 15%. So I stay in the places that have the most information and mathematically are the easiest to beat. I have to do less well to beat those, or if I do equally well, I beat those in a bigger way. And I have more information because all books are pricing spreads and totals. You can see all of the relevant line movement. Do I dig into player data? No. Do I dig into AI? No. I'm very aware of player data and what models other people are running in the industry, because of relationships, because of taking in a lot of content, listening. I host a podcast. Trust me, I am a firm believer you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. I listen a lot more than I talk. And so I'm very aware of what other sharp groups are saying. Things I study are like, what's the line movement that's been happening in the Connecticut Suns games for the last 10 games? What's the line movement that happens when Asia Wilson is ruled out? Because the next time she's questionable, I'll be able to know based on her past. Like, those are the things that I do. All of my stuff is line movement based and trying to beat the line. So what I study are detailed parts of those indicators that lead to line movement. Because if I'm studying the indicators and I know this is going to lead to line movement, then I've created the position that I want. I think you guys probably know Raheem Palmer at The Ringer, who I do some podcasts with and chat a lot on Twitter and stuff with, and reference in the newsletter. He uses the phrase, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, which there is in the betting space. Like, there's a lot of different ways to win. If you're using player data, fine. If you're using AI, fine. Totally fine. What's important is beating the closing line. So it is, even people who are using player data and AI are still trying to place bets in best market positions, smart markets, best available line, and obtain closing line value. So if their goal is the same goal as mine, I personally think it's a little easier to just study the fuck out of the market and understand it than try and dig through player stats and try and figure out what they're using to move a market. I'll just say, see you doing it. I don't care if you're using VORP, SHMORP, adjusted win total, ERA, first downs, possession rate. I don't care. But if it moves a line, I want to know about it. Thoughts about survivor pools, Nick? I think survivor pools are fucking awesome, and I think football contests and I think contest betting is one of the fucking most advantageous forms of sports betting that you could do today. Like, let's use the circuit contest, for example, because that's the big one. Circuit Survivor. It's $1,000 to enter. Survivor contest is you pick one team per week to win, and just it's essentially a money line bet. And if you make it to the end, you take home the whole pot, or you start chopping it in when it gets down to a certain amount, and you guys can all split it or whatever. The beauty of that contest for both me and the book, me being sharp, them being the house, is that there is no tax. There's no house cut. There's no minus 110 in these contests. If they get X amount of entries times 1,000, that's what they pay out. They don't take $1. So why is that good for me? Because there's no house cut as into those. And a lot of these contests are no house cut. So the beauty of it is that, great, I'm playing a contest, not paying the house, and probably playing against a competition pool that's a lot weaker than I am, that has some fish in it, right? That can be picked off because these people are going to choose the Bengals in week 1. The Bengals were not the right choice in week 1. And that's hindsight. And if they won, I wouldn't be saying that. I would have been saying they were a fine choice. But I still don't think process-wise they were the right choice. Because one of the things that you have to value in survivor pools is this team in this situation projected to be a favorite right now more than they will ever be this season? So last week, that was the Saints at home against the Carolina Panthers. I said, look at the Saints schedule. They will not be above -4 unless they wildly precede expectations, but using preseason power rankings and using the information I had going into week 1, said, okay, and you literally have every game priced, because they do that for football now, which is crazy and makes it more difficult, but whatever, they do it. And so you have all the games. So you knew Saints -4 or whatever was like the biggest favorite they were going to be. So that was an obvious choice for me. Seattle was another very good choice at home against Bo Nixon's first game. When you led up to Sunday against the Bengals, or the Bengals against the Patriots, and you knew, like, all summer Bengals were a fine pick. Bengals have a last place schedule because they finished last in their division. So they have a very easy schedule. They play the Commanders, they play the Panthers in the first 4 weeks. Like, they have the Chiefs this week, but Commanders and Panthers following that. There's going to be spots where you'd want to pick off the Bengals. The Bengals have historically really struggled early in the season, and you had the T. Higgins hamstring thing pop up, the Jamar contract stuff go crazy. So, like, there was so much noise that I think 45% of contests were going to choose the Bengals last week. And then I think it ended at 34% because I think a lot of people correctly jumped ship saying, you have a lot of time to still play the Bengals. This is not their only spot. This is a good spot. It was a good spot, but it wasn't the only spot. So just going for the longest favorite in a given week, that's surviving. That's not playing to win. If you want to play to win these contests, you need to think down the road. And so if you're always just picking off the highest favorite, then you're going to be put in a situation where you have to choose numerous dogs in a row later on. Like, you're going to get caught. So I don't overly concern myself with, like, what's too much of the schedule stuff. You should, if you're some survivor pools have, like, you have to choose a Thanksgiving game. So, like, you need to know you have to keep one of those 6 teams that are playing on Thanksgiving available because Thanksgiving comes after week 6. And so if you use those teams, you literally just get burned and the pool will say, fuck you, that's in the rules. So yeah, these are the things. And then why is it plus EV for the house? Why would they do this? Why would the casino take in all this money, do all this work to uphold it, and then pay all the money out? They don't. They don't pay all the money out. When you get to week 10, when you get to week 11, and you're like, wow, my $1,000 survivor entry has a equity stake right now of $114,000. And it's week 10. And if I make it to next week, that shit will be worth $227,000. Potentially even more. You make it to week 14, depending on how many other people there, your ticket might be worth $2.3 million. You put in 1,000. So what are you gonna do? You choosing just another team that week and going like this while you watch the screen? Or are you reaching out to the casino who sees what your equity stake is and saying, can I open up a line of credit and bet a $50,000 hedge in the other direction? So you're betting $50K against yourself and a hedge where you're now paying minus 110. So you are paying into it and you are giving them some hold because your hedge has hold in it. And hedging is minus EV. So when they get to the end of the contest, the biggest winners are going to start hedging. And they do. Trust me. The sharps will absolutely hedge those tickets. You have so much riding on it that you will do something slightly minus EV when you like. It's essentially a 17-leg parlay, money lining each week. And if even a sharp who has 15 legs hit in a row, it's going to say, all right, I should consider like turning this into 3-4 cars. Yeah, I mean, I'm not just going to be hung up on process at this point, turning $1,000 into $200,000. So I love survivor pools. I took the Saints in week 1. I'm probably taking the Ravens in week 2. I think Ravens at home 0-1 against the Raiders. The coaching looked suspect last week with Pierce. I think that's a strong spot. Question about the under 43.5 in Jack's Cleveland. It's down to 41.5 on DraftKings. What's the play? Wait till it bottoms out and take it over. Josh, did you already play 43.5? Type in and I just went on for like 7 minutes about survivor pools. So Josh, if you're still here, let me know if you already got 43.5. It's down to 41. 42 is not a key number in the NFL. It's 21-21. What happens? You go to overtime. So 41 is not, 42 is not super key. 43 and 41, super key. So if this gets to 41 and you want to create a 41 to 43.5 middle, super, super long-term profitable position. If it gets to 40.5 and you want to create that middle, even more profitable. And if you want to ride an under 43.5 while it sits at 41.5, or it sits at 41, or it sits at 40.5, really profitable situation. So there's often like the correct answer is so in the minutia, and it's like in the value percentages, it's so small that it becomes a situation of like, why did you place the bet? Did you place the bet because you thought the line movement was, you just saw the line movement? Or did you place the bet because you had conviction in the direction too? This one I just saw every other book was below the 43 and I could get above the 43. I knew 43 was key. That's it. That was the only reason I took the bet, only. I also think Browns D is good. I also think Jags D is good. So we could start adding stuff to it. I don't know. I'm going to wait. I'm personally going to wait with my 43.5 under, but I think there's no wrong answer. It's all good stuff to be in that zone. The wrong answer would be playing an over. The wrong answer is playing the over 41.5. Don't do that. But because 42's pointless. Not pointless. Less important. So, yeah. Kubiak's kid being the Saints offensive coordinator is going to change a lot, in my opinion. We were busted up last year. Mike Thomas's bullshit and Carr being Carr. Look out for that. Did not know Jason was on the Saints. It's pretty sweet. We have an NFL player in the chat. I won't tell Roger you're gambling. Yeah, I think the Saints game versus the Carolina Panthers is the one that even the power rankers don't know what to do. I've seen them bumped up like 1 point or half a point in the power rankings, and normally when you win 47-10, people are not confused how to change your power ranking, and it's in week 1. But was that how bad the Panthers were, or is that how decent the Saints really are? We'll find out this week. This week I'm on the Cowboys -6.5, and Cowboys at home with McCarthy and Dak have been very good at covering the spread. I got the 6.5 when it was -110, and every other book was at -115, and sevens were starting to pop up. It's been a real bouncy week in the NFL. Super bouncy week. A lot of sharp groups seemingly hitting both sides of lines. So now there's 6.5s and some 6s. So it sucks to be on a 6.5 when there's a 6. The 6 is less important in recent years than it has been overall, but it still sucks. But Cowboys at home in that spot have generally been good, and I would not be surprised if it still closes at 6.5. But it's not going to go back to 7 because there was resistance at 7 and there was seemingly resistance at 6. So it's either going to be a juiced 6 or a 6.5 flat. So see how that one plays out. Go Cowboys. Am I right, Blake? Anything else? Ronnie is right outside, completely passed out. Let sleeping dogs lie, they say. I was going to see if she wanted to make an appearance, but we can let her sleep. Let's see. Yes. Yes, it was. Dilante, am I saying it right? It was. You can listen. You should. If you like gambling strategy stuff, go listen to the last half hour of the WNBA podcast I just did with Drew yesterday or Monday. We did it on Monday covering Tuesday's games. And just skip the first half hour and go to the second half hour, and you can listen to me talk about that because it was my biggest loss. I've had bigger wins, but that was my biggest loss. Sucked. We can run from it though. We don't get it back. And to that point, I was just having a conversation in there where we talked about I'm going to share this tab. In that podcast, I talked about how books will often set a max wager of about $2,000. And then today, I saw this get posted to Twitter from a shark. And you can see that a lot of accounts often post big slips from FanDuel. Those are not sharp accounts. Sharp accounts generally not limited at FanDuel will have the $2,000 limits on liability. So if we do some pretty basic math and we say, what is this $2,439 with a minus 122 odds, that is $1 off from allowing a max bet with a $2,000 liability. So I just thought it was timely, and I sent this to Drew on the side. Also, like second quarter spread minus 2.5. What is this guy doing? What does he know? I don't know. It's gotta make me feel a little bit better as a Cowboys minus 6.5. Me saying this guy is sharp is not a reason to go tell this bet. He could have just randomly picked a bet and put in a bet slip to show the screenshot of the tweet. But there's a lot of conversations today about limits and maxes and stuff, and I hate the conversation, to be honest, but it is what it is. A little weather check for tonight's game. No more chance of thunderstorms. There was partial chance of thunderstorms before. Now we got no more chance of thunderstorms. So let's see what happened in those props that were taking some steam. And I felt like it was more or less weather related. Nah, prop market hasn't moved. It was sub 20% chance of thunderstorms. And I was like, maybe that's a reason why there's been some late movements and some unders, but no. I just bought a Paul George Sixers jersey. Am I a loser? You want to know the real answer to that question? Did you buy the authentic jersey that's like legitimately comfortable to wear and costs like $120? Or did you buy the material that like so itchy and you can't ever wear it and you got it for $49.99? If you're going to put it on a wall, get the cheap. I still even think the nicer jersey looks nice. And if you're going to have a wall piece, 120 as an investment in a wall piece, not a big deal. I also think if you're buying it to legitimately wear, you want to know my biggest, one of my gambling thoughts that spills over into other aspects of my life is that all clothes cost the same. All clothing costs the same. True. The reason why, as someone who grew up with their mother owning the local clothing store in the town, that's what my mom did. If you buy nicer clothes, if you buy the $120 jersey, I promise you wear that 2.5 times more than the shitty jersey. You might throw it on when you're watching a game. You might wear it to more parties. You might wear it to theme events. You might wear it to the bar to go watch a game. It becomes a situation where that $49.99 jersey is only worn like when you go to the games because the shit is itchy and I'm putting an undershirt on it or like whatever. So if you really break it down, and one of them's going to wash way nicer and then stay nicer after the laundry. So if you really break it down into cost per wear, all clothes cost the same. Buying a $100 pair of sweatpants or a $30 pair of sweatpants from Champion, and you get the other ones from like Lulu, you're going to wear the Lulu ones 3 times as much and they will last longer. Is there any strategy that can be applied to baseball bets? Should I instead just light my money on fire? No, definitely don't. Yes, strategy that can be applied to baseball bets. So here are some bases of strategies that I know. Getting closing line value still matters a lot. Now, I don't know which books have a better track record with baseball, but I would assume like start paying attention to where lines are moving in directions. So if you are generating a percentage in baseball, it needs to be more percentage based because you're probably playing money lines or run lines where the VIG changes, not the actual line. So like in a football scenario or in a basketball scenario, I know what the value of the number is and therefore can attribute it to a percent outcome to then know if the bet that I'm covering will have enough edge to cover the tax I'm paying on it. So you still need closing line value to be profitable in any long-term sample size. So strategy that can be applied is track sharp books for when they release lines. I don't know which books are sharp in baseball. And then price compare them and try and get in early and generate closing line value and have a threshold for a percentage in which that's a cutoff where you're going to assume that you know a line is going to be off this far. So you're going to project the amount of steam to come. Also in baseball, you generally have underdogs that are like around plus 120 to plus 150 have historically been the best cover rate, like where their cover rate is beyond their implied probability, so profitable. So that would be the situation that I would say you can use baseball. Generate closing line value. Look at dogs plus 150 range. Look at star pitchers. Star pitchers are dominating baseball this year. And that's just like quarterbacks in the NFL, star pitchers are a line movement driver. So like if you know a star is pitching for the Detroit Tigers, I think they have a stud, right? There's a stud that's either on the Tigers or the White Sox, like fucking stud. So look for openers on when he's pitching on White Sox money lines or go first 5 run line because Screwball, that's exactly the guy. Don't know who he is, but I know he's an ace. I know he's been dominant, and I know regardless of how he fares against the spread or whatever, because it's all those stats that you're going to look at are going to reflect closing line value. Not closing line value, closing line a record based on the closing line. But I'm positive that Screwball's line movement from his open to close would be play the Detroit, a little money line, maybe a little first 5. I think that's that. I don't know as much, so I would try and learn it as you go. Hope I have Texans minus 4.5 and Steelers Broncos under 40.5 for 1 unit each. would you open up a middle, and what would you recommend? Right now, it's Bears plus 6.5. Wait for the 7 and 36.5. So I wouldn't do it on 36. If it gets down to 35, which it's not going to, yes. But it's not going to get down to 36. So I would probably let Steelers Broncos ride because that's just a fantastic bet. Texans are minus 4.5 and they're playing the Bears and it's 6.5. 5 is not important. The 6 is losing a little relevance. I would ride them both right now. But if it gets to 7 or if it gets to 35, not 36, then I would consider opening up the other side for half a unit. Up to half. Like, yeah, 25 to 2/3 is a smart buyback unless you're dumping a ticket, right? There's times where you want to dump a ticket because you don't like it anymore and you want to either bet 100% off between 75 to, if you're betting between 75 to 200% the other direction, because sometimes you literally double it. Drew and I were talking on a podcast 2 weeks ago. WNBA, he's like, I bet this direction because I saw the line movement, but my whole plan is to come back the other way twice as hard. So that would be dumping at 200 the other direction, still in a positive EV sense, which is brilliant. But there's times where you maybe lose closing line value and you want to dump a ticket, and so you would bet it. But in a buyback, you'd want to stay where you keep most of your value tilted towards your positive CLV side that you like, and you're essentially buying insurance. And what you're doing when you're creating these middles is you're reducing. The beauty of the middle is that you're doing two things at once. You're reducing your max loss and increasing your max win at the same damn time. So if you get to the situations where, how many times have you said it, your friend said it, or anyone going, how does Vegas know this shit? How are they so good? How do they know how to leave these lines? Wait. We're at Pick'em in this NFL game? No. Jason, what did you mean by this? Anyways, the middle increases your max win, and if the line is super sharp, you're going to sweep. DK has it at plus. Let's fucking go. What happened? Who the fuck came in on? No. I still see 2.5. It's back at 2.5. Damn. That would have been nice. I wonder what did that. Glitch in the system? Someone got it? Jason, was that numerous books or only DraftKings? That would be. I mean, getting both sides. That's point. You do like to see it in. I would assume that's a little error, a little technical glitch that happened more than anything for a 2-point line movement this late. No. You'd have to have some news like Tua's not playing or Waddle, Tyreek's not playing. Is Tyreek playing? Check my fantasy team for that news because that'd be something. Tyreek seems good to go. You prefer it to be that direction than the other direction, though. Jason. Like, I'd rather it quickly go to 0.5 than quickly go to 3.5 or 4. Much prefer that. Before we head out, we'll stay here for another 5 minutes. If anyone has questions, drop them in. I love personally attacking look-ahead lines in the NFL. It's one of my favorite things to do. I have strategies for what I call HLAs, half look-aheads, when one team's played but the other team hasn't, and you could still bet into it. For example, the Jets this week. You would notice that I played Jets -4 for week 2 after the Titans played, but before the Jets played on Monday night. Now, why would I do that? It's an HLA situation, half look ahead. One team is still on the look ahead line. One team that's their line for their next game. The sharp side of Jets 49ers was clearly Jets. That line came down from 5.5 to 3.5. CMC News didn't even budget to the 3 because there was already enough sharp action on the Jets. So for that reason, and same thing on Bengals. Like, there was so much preseason steam on the Bengals, so much week 1 steam on the Bengals, and the Chiefs play on the first game. So you have a half look ahead spots. No, they didn't they look good, but they didn't look they look great, but they didn't look like the world beaters. Oh, they do. They're the Chiefs. And you could play into these spots where you're a sharp side on one of the teams and the opposite of the sharp side on the other, and get ahead of it relative to a key number. So I thought Jets -4 when every other book was 4.5. I was like, this might move to 6. Like, if the Jets actually cover, I didn't even need them to win. The Jets just covered against the 49ers with the amount of sharp action that was on them. I expected them to cover. You'd have Jets -6 right now. And same thing with the Bengals. If the Bengals didn't have a catastrophe tornado swoop through their town, with how good Burrow's been in Arrowhead, you would have this game at 3. So if you would have these look-ahead spots and get movement relative to sharp action the week before, right? There was Bears sharp action. There was Jets sharp action. So let's fade the Titans the following week. Let's back the Jets the following week. Sucks that those didn't work out, and now I find myself a little behind. Like, the Chiefs is -5.5, and the Jets I have -4. There's 3.5s. That sucks. But it is what it is. On side note, what do you think about? Look at this example. What do I think about the Chiefs -4.5 versus Falcons for week 3 Sunday Night Football? I think I already bet the Chiefs -3 in the look ahead spot because the strategy worked. It worked for Seattle -2.5 this week too. So I think I have no opinion on the Falcons because it's irresponsible for me to have an opinion on the Falcons. I don't understand it, why there's so much action and there's so much momentum behind this Falcons team. I never thought Arthur Smith was a bad coach. I thought he didn't play the players that people like to use in fantasy. Teams still move the ball up and down, and then they would just have a turnover in the end zone because it was Desmond Ridder. Like, I actually was impressed with the way that they moved the ball and have developed some players and had a strong offensive line. And I didn't think Arthur Smith was the problem. Then you bring in Kirk, then they draft Penix. They get a really easy schedule. People fucking love the Falcons this year. Win totals 9.5, -140 to the over. Scratching my head 12 times at that. They come out and they drop an absolute dud. They were the sharp side for week 1. So yeah, I fade Falcons, but at 4.5, I would wait until. I don't think at 4.5 it's worth playing yet, because you would need it to get to 6 for it to have strong value to worth playing it in the look ahead. Whereas you might get it to go back to 4 if the Bengals clean up and look a little bit better. And like, playing against you generally want to fade Mahomes when he's bigger than a 3-point spread, and you want to back Mahomes when he's less than a 3-point favorite. So 4.5 is a tough number to play into now, because if it moves to 5, it moves to 5.5. It doesn't matter much. If it moves to 4 and you could have played a -4 later, that would be great. I can't believe that there were 3s available earlier this season. That's a joke. What's the process on deciding core players for DFS lineups? I'm going to answer that, and then we'll get out of here. Process for me. So one thing I didn't put in my newsletter, that when I explained the About Me process and was talking about me being a freshman studying gambling and studying all these professional gamblers, that's when DraftKings and FanDuel were only DFS sites. And they were only like the DFS where you have a salary cap, you choose your players, you put them into a lineup. So I have, and I figured out things like, oh, Drew, come in the studio. So I figured out things like stack ratios and correlations for like if you're playing a quarterback, you want to be in a large contest. If you're playing a quarterback, you want to be playing a wide receiver, their wide receiver 2, and the other team's opposing wide receiver 1. If you're playing Josh Allen tonight, you want to play like a Mac Hollins type player, and you want to play Tyreek the other way because that's the correlated stack. So I started studying these stack ratios and getting used to that, and then like running back defense are very correlated. You never want to play running back with opposing tight end. You never want to play running back wide receiver on opposing teams because, again, if this guy's running the ball, he's chewing clock that the other receiver's off the field. So there's certain stacks that make a lot of sense for DFS lineups. And so that's the way that I play into tournaments. And now we get to the next level. And that's like kind of was my entry point into a lot of this. And spread and regular game lines and totals. But I also was heavy into the DFS scene too. And then the DFS world, the reason why I generally don't do as much DFS anymore is because one, the hold is higher. So those contests and even the head-to-heads and your basic 50-50s that are essentially a minus 110 bet, it's a 5% or a 10% rake rate. So like bet 50 to get 95 back. So 50 to win 45, you're losing. Like your house cut is baked in there. So it's slightly larger than betting into a minus 110. And there became optimizers that were just so easy to find everywhere. So there's a lot of these optimizers that tell people who to play and they would bake in these stack correlations and whatever. So it got to the point in the DFS scene where the rake rate was a little higher and the player pool was a little sharper because you were used to be able to pick off schmucks. So the way that I like to play DFS now is in 50-50 contests. Those are like when you have 30 players in the lobby and the top 15 get paid and the bottom 15 don't. You literally just have to be better than half. So my process for DFS is I check a bunch of different optimizers to know who's going to be a high rostered player. And in situations where you just have to be above the 50% line, I actually like to play into those players. So like last week with Tyreek, I wanted to play into that. And if he was going to be owned by 70% of the league, it was a good thing for me because if you're in these 50-50 situations and you play optimized lineups, then you're going to let other people who are entering these contests who don't know as much or aren't checking optimizers or anything, like let them make the mistake of pivoting. It is in a tournament. It is in a GPP, guaranteed prize pool, the milli makers, where you need to break from the thing, and there he is. Where you need to break from the thing and add players that are going to be 2% owned so that you can have a really high score. But if you are in a contest where you just need to be above half, then just be your average Joe and let other people make mistakes. So for choosing a core 4 player, and when I send out hey, these are core 4, those are cash players, cash lineups, 50-50s, head-to-heads, and then go the other way and avoid those players in GPPs. Those are players that I think are going to do well and you shouldn't avoid. That's my process for choosing core 4. These are going to be highly rostered and just don't be the guy that skips this. What's up, Drew?
Oh, hi, buddy. Can you hear me?
I can. I just saw you go outside, inside, outside, inside. Now you're back outside.
Yeah, I'm back outside. No, I can't get my camera to work tonight for whatever reason. See, watch. See? And then the lighting just goes red. I don't get it.
Now the people in here know that when I was calling you what did I call you? I was like, you were red as a lobster the other day.
Yeah. Sunburnt from basketball and golf.
Yeah, it wasn't that. It's the lighting. You joined us at the end of our hour of what I did was I held like a little hour office hours for people to come ask questions who are in the WHOP package to come stop by and just ask anything. And I'd say it went pretty well.
Yeah, it sounds like you were making some good points. I just saw you, like I loaded up YouTube as I was eating and saw you live, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, I did not advertise it.
No.
I actually wanted to make the video private, but I didn't. Listen, I don't think we're getting too many people sliding in here who aren't supposed to be in here. Anyone got any questions for Drew? Poker questions? Drew, are you watching the football game tonight?
I don't think so. Probably not. I'm probably going to play poker, actually. Actually, no, I'll definitely have it on in the background. The Bills are playing, so I forgot it was them.
It's Canada's team.
It shows you how much I pay attention, eh? It's the only game on the Thursday night, and one of the teams I find more interesting is playing, and I'm not caring.
You want to know what bets I gave out for tomorrow's WNBA?
Do you want to play the guessing game?
Oh yeah. And then we'll get out of here.
When did you make said bets? Because I'm looking at lines now. So
last night, and then I added and repopped another one once it moved a little bit.
I'm gonna guess you took the aces to cover and potentially the links to. No, I think that spread's too big. But you might have wanted the movement, and you probably took the line movement on Atlanta as well. Is what I'm saying.
That was the one I repopped.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely on the dream. I actually took Caitlin Clark and the Fever in this spot. I got 5.5, and now there's 6s, so that one bites. I'm also on the over in that game, 176.5. And
to be fair, I like that better. I just know that you're pretty sharp on line directions, so
right. Yeah,
I mean, the Aces just did beat Indiana in Indiana, right? Too by like 10, wasn't it in Indy? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they're back-to-back games in Indy, so no travel, no rest, nothing like that. So I figured take the Fever here in the bounce back spot, and maybe Asia Wilson sits. And then I have Dream, and then I have the under in. I have over in Aces Fever. I have the under in Sun Mercury 160.5, and I have the under in.
Oh my goodness, that's a beaut.
I know, and I have the under Link Sky 158.5.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
look at this guy picking them off. I love it.
Yeah. All right, buddy. I was actually going to ask you if you wanted to join me because I didn't know if there would be a shit ton of questions, and then I would have you here to, if I wasn't answering it in full, to ask a follow up on behalf of these people. But I think it went pretty well. Maybe next time. But I'm going to do this like every 2 weeks. And just be around to answer questions for people.
Yeah, but it's easy to pop in when I'm playing poker or doing whatever else too, right?
Yeah,
I don't have to be fully engaged, right?
Exactly. You don't need to be fully engaged.
Cool.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Drew, thanks for popping on.
No problem.
This will be every 2 weeks office hours. Thank you for tuning in. Goodbye.